those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all Nerds International. With the hyphen. Nerds International proudly presents.
We want to take you on a quest for knowledge. One that will take us from ancient medieval fantasy across the far reaches of space to the distant future. To many savage worlds.
Welcome to the Wild Eye Podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to Pinnacle Entertainment's Savage Worlds, aimed at beginners and veterans alike.
Yeah, the Showdown, Lankhmar versus Guild of Shadows, and for that we invited Richard Woolcock. He's been on the show many times, almost more often than Manuel. Oops, did I just say that? Hi, Manuel. Hi, Richard.
Hey, Eric. Hello, Eric.
This is a showdown. I'm excited about it because we haven't had one in over 6 months, I think. But this was the right time. I remember on Facebook someone was asking what the difference was between Lankhmar and Guild of Shadows because they share a similar theme, the thieves, right? So what you can find in each and how different they are. So we're going to have that. But first, we just want to go over a couple things, excuse me, before we move on to the thick of the show. First, well, there was Dragon Spawn that called me out a couple weeks ago because I didn't answer a question from a listener about the multiple action penalty. I mean, I did answer it, but nobody wanted to listen. What was the question, Harrison?
It was, can you shoot with one hand, shoot with the other hand, throw the gun, kick the enemy in the nuts, then burp out a spell, presuming this spell has the burp trapping? And I asked this on Facebook as well, and there was sort of three types of people. There were people that thought I was an idiot, people that thought that you should just have fun, and people that thought I was an idiot but sort of gave an answer anyway. And so we've got like an expert on the show, and seeing as people aren't going to listen to Eric, even though he did answer it, go back and listen, right? Before complaining, Stefan, listen to the bloody show. He did bloody answer it. But Richard, seeing as people actually listen when you talk, can you do all of those actions in one turn?
No.
You're wrong.
Thanks for coming out, Richard.
You can't repeat the same action. And an attack is an action, not the actual fighting, throwing, shooting. So it's the fact that you're making an attack. You're allowed to attack with two different hands, and by hand that actually includes things like kick and headbutt. You know, from a games mechanics perspective, you really just have two locations, which is kind of left hand and right hand, and this can be described as a kick or a headbutt or whatever. But really, you just get the two attacks. So a primary hand and an offhand. And if you're making an attack with a two-handed weapon, that actually counts as both. I asked on the forums a while ago, I asked Clint if you could, say, shoot with a bow and then attack with your other hand as a melee attack. And he said no, because the bow requires two hands to use. You can't even make another attack. You couldn't kick, you couldn't headbutt. Right. So the answer is no, you can't do that.
Because I've been getting in deep in the discussion on the Facebook after I answered this on the official Savage Worlds Facebook, unofficial, sorry. Now, is it possible that even though Clint Black, he's the rules manager for Savage Worlds, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Is it possible that even though he has the official ruling on the rules, that he could rule things badly and wrong?
It's not actually possible because his word is considered the official ruling.
Yes, okay, it may be the official rules. I'm just saying that it is bad and wrong. Because I'm saying that shoot, throw, kick, burp is much more fun than you can only attack twice in one go because I'm Clint Black McBoring.
I think what Clint generally says is that the GM can do whatever they want in their own games.
Yeah.
Okay, right, yes. So yeah, the GM can do whatever they want in their own game. So Clint Black isn't at my game, so what he says, fine,
Right.
I'll take it on board, but if I'm playing a comedy game, then by all means they can attempt all that crap in one turn. It's not gonna work. But what I said in this Facebook discussion was, when I was a kid, my brother used to do this mental attack at me to try and hurt me, where he would punch me with both hands and kick me with both feet all at the same time. Right? Try it, and all the listeners, try it at the end of this podcast. You can do it.
Don't.
Just go
I'm
up
not sure how effective it would be. In fact, the whole thing could probably just be described as a trick.
Okay.
Or a taunt.
No, you're right, but I'm saying it wouldn't be effective. But if you wanted to try it as an attack, you could. And it did hurt me. It literally hurt me. It is an attack.
You could say, I'm making a single attack, but I'm describing that as a whole flurry of leaping up in the air, hitting them with both knees, both feet, both shins, my testicles, my fists, my forehead. But it's really just one attack.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
What it really comes down to is what works at your table. Plus, if it's an NPC, you can give that NPC a monstrous ability where that monster can perform as many attacks as you want, and there's nothing that can stop you from doing that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Superpowers Companion, even though the racial creation guidelines and the core rules have options for that. I mean, the Fantasy Companion has a Hydra, where every head is its own attack.
See, this is what I don't understand, right? This is what people like. Let's say, for example, okay, I'm not going to name any names, right? But let's say there were certain people when this discussion came out, right? I'm fully aware it's a dumb question, and I am just being silly, okay? But the point is that it's like Eric says, whatever works at your table works at your table, and this is an open system, so I think certain rules should be open and you should just do what works at your table, because there were certain people on the Facebook, right, that were reminding me a little bit of North Korea. Okay, this is an open system. It's not about telling people what to do. It's about having fun. All right, and whatever works for you and whatever gets the flavor right in your game, do that. Okay,
yeah,
I guarantee you.
In that case, why did you ask?
If you're running it for your own group, you can do what you want, of course, and you just have to understand the repercussions. But if you're running it at a con game, or if you're publishing your actual system for something else, if you write an adventure and you want to publish it, and it doesn't follow the rules, then that's when it starts getting a bit, you're going to get criticism from people. It's important to understand the rules, even if you don't actually want to follow them.
That's exactly it, and that was part of the reason I asked.
The question was not, how does this rule work at Harrison's game as opposed to the official rules? So
yeah, no, but we've already figured out what the official rules are.
And one thing I should point out, that Clint never tells people how they should run their own games. It's just that these questions get brought up. People want to know how the official ruling is or how it's supposed to be done, but there's always with the caveat that you can run it however you want in your own games. So it really just depends what you want to do, what you want to do with it.
Yeah, I know, and like I said, if there's been times where I've run like games for newbies, for example, and for not my regular group, and I'll just run things exactly by the book because it's much easier that way rather than saying usually the rules are this way, but I do it this way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's it for that. Now on to some feedback. We received some good feedback on Kings of Convenience. This is a 4-part mini campaign that we started before the holidays, ran by Harrison Hunt and featuring the rest of the cast, the Wild Eye Podcast cast. And we're 2 episodes in and people like it. So I want to ask you, would you like us to run more of these, more mini series? And if so, do you have any special requests, certain settings or, whatever, we can do that? Or would you rather we discuss topics instead, like we're kind of doing now? I'm not sure if we're having really good conversation, but we're talking. So
yeah, if you want to see maybe like a sci-fi game or fantasy, or if there's a certain setting you'd like to see us play or something like this, then by all means contact us, and we'll give you the contact details at the end of the show.
Yep. And now on to important Savage Worlds news and Nerds International or Wild Die announcements.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the news. The news is incoming. Prepare yourself for the news. News! And some announcements about the Nerds International Network and the Wild Die Podcast.
So there's a Kickstarter going on right now called Children of the Apocalypse. This is by Happy Monster. And actually, that looks like a fantasy post-apocalyptic type of game. I don't know too much, but I know Manuel is interviewing the writer later today on this channel, Veiled Fury Entertainment. So that should be out pretty soon too, probably around the same time this episode airs. So anything you can tell us about it, Manuel?
Well, it's an post-apocalyptic setting with a kind of twist. The basic idea is 500 years ago, the gods went to war. And when gods go to war, everything dies. That's what happened. Basically, everything and everyone died except for a few people, and they're just getting back on their feet. They're rebuilding civilization. They're trying to find scraps of old technology to improve their lives. And the gods are pretty much all gone except for 9 of them. And they are still very much involved in the lives of the people who are left and who are worshipping them. So without getting into too much detail, should be interesting. It's kind of a fantasy post-apocalyptic setting because there's magic and everything, but it's based on our real world. So when the world died, that's, at least I'm assuming from the information I have so far, that's our real time. And then 500 years into the future, it all went back to a kind of medieval fantasy state.
Sounds good. So if you want to find out more about it, just watch Veiled Fury Entertainment. We'll have a link in the show notes and also a link to the Kickstarter page. So go check that out. Now, new addition to the network, to Nerds International Network, we have a new blogger. Well, he's not new. He's been blogging for years, and his blog is very good. Gaming Ronin. He plays a variety of games and talks about these games, running these games, things that can help you run these games. So check out the Gaming Ronin. Again, we'll have a link to his blog, and then the next one from your sweet prince at Con on the Cob, Gary. Can you talk about that show?
Yeah, Mr. Chris Holmes and Tony Fanning started a new podcast called Finding the Dice that just rolled off the table because I had 70,000 of them in this pool of craziness for this new Genesys system. It's a great podcast.
Chris and Tony brings about 70 years of experience combined in RPGs. I had the pleasure of playing in their games at Con on the Cob. One was a Star Wars, Fantasy Flight Star Wars, and the other one was a hack of Primeval Tool, ran with the same rules, which is basically Genesys, but Chris did Genesys before Genesys was a thing. So, and these guys have been playing the system since it came out, so they're going through the rules, how to build a dice pool, what these dice mean. And I listened to their first episode. It's a pretty good podcast. So.
And they've got buckets of personality too. I really like them. They are cool guys.
Yeah.
Their podcast is actually pretty good. If you want to learn about the Genesys podcast or the Genesys system, I would suggest that. The unfortunate side effect of this podcast is that at Con on the Cob, I had to sleep with Chris Holmes. So his breathing has this. We slept in the same hotel room. We shared a room together.
Oh, right.
So his breathing has this rhythmic sort of pulse to it that puts me to sleep, and I can hear him breathing into the mic. So as I'm listening to his podcast, it just kind of naturally sort of like lulls me to sleep because I can hear him breathing into the microphone.
That is both amazing and creepy at the same time.
Gary, that's weird, man. Okay, other important news. Flash Gordon, the Kickstarter thingy that Peg Inc. or Pinnacle, as some people call them, that came out, right? And obviously a lot of people have been sending it around. Don't do that. don't do that, right? But you can now buy it off their website for 20 quid as well. $20, I think. I don't know how much it is, but it doesn't matter. Everyone's been loving it. Or have they? No, it's been controversial. Some of the changes to Savage Worlds Black are now in this book. Manuel, do you want to talk about that for a second?
I had a quick look at it, and yeah, there's some changes in there that are getting discussed even in the German Savage World scene as rather controversial. Mostly the joining of certain skills into one skill package, the new states which have existed basically forever, except back then they weren't called states, but hey, whatever, your mileage may vary. So yeah, there's a lot in it that may see an introduction into the new core rules. A lot of its base is pretty much obviously going to be setting rules for Flash Gordon. I think it's a very interesting book, takes a few very interesting approaches, but we're going to have to see how that all plays out in the long run.
I think at the moment the changes that they've made appear to work perfectly for Flash Gordon. Will they work for main Savage Worlds? Don't know, but we'll see. I think that the book itself is absolutely gorgeous. They kind of took the same approach they did with the Goon, didn't they, Eric? Where they just took artwork from the original comics and stuff. But it works. It's better than what they usually do.
Yeah, what's important to remember here is that Shane already said that Flash Gordon, well, those changes will be testing grounds for what ends up in the Savage Worlds Black, what they call Black right now. But yeah. Richard calls it extra juicy.
I like that. But did they name Savage Worlds Black after Clint Black? Egotistical.
Maybe.
No, there's been discussion about it. I don't know.
Whatever feedback you give on Flash Gordon and those rules is going to influence what ends up in the final book. But anyway, we're working on an episode on this. I mean, next episode of The Wild Eye is going to be part 3 of Kings of Convenience. But after that, probably we'll have a full episode on the changes, and we're going to discuss them, what we think, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, stay tuned. And finally, well, on related news, because we have Richard here, Saga of the Goblin Horde is now available on Drive-Thru RPG. How about that?
Does that mean we can get printed copies through Drive-Thru now?
No.
You have to go through anyone else, basically. Anyone that offers personal printing service. So there's print-ready PDFs available for either softcover or hardcover. And yeah, Lulu is easy because I know how to use it. It's particularly easy for just for regular people to use. Drive-Thru RPGs, I've not actually used it at all, but I've heard that it's quite difficult. You have to negotiate a bit with the printers, and they get things wrong sometimes. So.
Well, I've got a copy that was printed via Lulu, and it looks incredible. I'm extremely proud to own it. But we're doing a little contest, aren't we, Eric?
We sure are, and I'm very excited about it. Can't you tell? Yes. So, speaking of Saga of the Goblin Horde and Lulu print, we want to, well, in collaboration with Richard, we want you to have a copy of a hardcover, premium color copy of Saga of the Goblin Horde. And it looks amazing. I've seen pictures of it, and it looks pretty good. So you can win this, or second prize is a $10 gift certificate to Drive-Thru RPG or RPG Now. And we're going to select 3 winners, though. Only the first winner will win the book. And so what do people have to do to win this, Harrison?
Well, to win this competition, all you have to do is send me a short, and I mean short, Goblin song. Right, but not like a fully made song, just the lyrics to a song, and then I will make the top 3 winners into an actual fully fledged song, which we will play on our podcast. Now, the deadline for this is March the 1st, so get your entries in by then. And yeah, all it has to be is a Goblin song of some sort. If you are not a talented lyricist, just take a known song that you know and change the lyrics up to make it about goblins. For example, Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody. Mama, I killed a man. Mama, I killed a goblin. You get the drift. But my point is, yeah, it is a goblin song contest. I think 16 lines is kind of the maximum. And if you bear in mind the last competition we did, where it was a setting competition, if they were too long, I just straight up didn't read them. They went in the bin. So if you go over the 16 lines, they will straight up go in the bin. Thank you.
Come up with a title too.
Yeah, come up with an amusing title as well, and keep them short, and they will be made into short goblin songs. And the top 3 winners we'll play them on the show, and number 1 gets the book, number 2 gets it $10 for Drive-Thru RPG. Isn't that exciting, everyone?
I thought you were going to say send me $20 and.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, I will accept bribes too. It's a premium hardcover colour copy of Saga of the Goblin Horde. So get entering, guys, and send your entries into thewilddie@gmail.com.
Yeah, do it. So now we can move on to the main part of the show, the showdown. You guys ready?
Hell yeah.
It's time for the showdown. 2 books go in, only 1 comes out. It's time to get brutal in this hideous bout.
Wait a minute, why are you describing it as some big bloody battle when it's just a bunch of people sitting around talking about 2 rival books and then comparing them? I mean, that's ridiculous.
Oh, you're no fun. Go away.
New Showdown episode. Woohoo! Finally. We are doing Lankhmar versus Guild of Shadows, and there seems to be the preconception that both are rather similar, so we are going to discuss both settings and find out if that is the truth. So for Lankhmar, we have Eric and Harrison, with Gary providing sweet and snarky commentary as usual. And for Guild of Shadows, we invited local for me, local expert Richard Woolcock, who contributed in no small part to the writing of Guild of Shadows. So, I think we're going to start off with something rather easy, and I think that would be trade dress, because nobody likes to read a boring and ugly book. So I'd say Lankhmar probably has a big bonus because it was produced by Pinnacle themselves, so they obviously have the budget to make a book look good. Or did they, Eric? How does the book look?
Well, I mean, I've said it before, and thanks to Gary. Also, I mean, I had the PDF, but for my birthday last year at Con on the Cob, Gary bought me the box set for Lankhmar, and the whole thing is absolutely gorgeous. The trade dress, I mean, you've got this kind of bas relief motifs. The color looks like worn paper. It's got kind of an ochre, brownish quality to it. The headers, artwork, the maps that you get with this. I think it's the most beautiful Savage Worlds product anyway, as far as trade dress goes. Savage Worlds always gets a little bit. People say the books could look better compared to bigger companies anyway. But this, to me, even it ranks up there with any other RPGs, really. It's just gorgeous.
One of the things I have to say about this is, when I played this, the second time I played Lankhmar, I played with a bunch of with newbies, and sometimes when you play fantasy games specifically, it's hard to sell newbies on it. And typically, I don't play fantasy when I play with people that are new to RPGs. Whereas Lankhmar, I feel like it has such a nice style to the artwork and the way it looks, that when you pass one of these books around, people go, he looks cool, that picture's awesome, and specifically with the archetypes and things, that you don't feel kind of embarrassed to hand them out to, like, let's call them like normies or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And like that was one of the merits of, I think, the way the books look and the way they're laid out and things like this. That I think they're cool in inverted commas. With I don't know like a better way to put it. that's certainly one of the biggest merits about it. I think it has kind of a universal appeal despite being fantasy. I know that fantasy is becoming cooler nowadays with like Game of Thrones and things like that, but yeah, I think that there's definitely a very cool appeal to it that can appeal to anyone. I absolutely love the way they're laid out and the way they look.
Cool. So you'd say the artwork alone is rather inspiring for what it's trying to do.
Certainly, yeah. And I think that it's one that I know that a lot of groups can definitely dig. And as Eric said, it looks better than a lot of other official Pinnacle products.
Yeah.
Cool. So, how about the trade dress of Guild of Shadows? You were a technical editor for the book, Richard. What exactly does a technical editor do?
Well, I made it clear that I wasn't going to go through and fix the grammar and spelling. Basically, what I offered to do was go through the mechanics, tighten those up, and also I added a lot more edges and hindrances to it. Although that wasn't the editor part. So originally, I offered to go through and check the stat blocks, check the rules were okay, check the edges and hindrances, provide feedback. And the publisher asked if I'd be interested in, actually adding those changes myself. So while I was doing that, I also made some proposals for some additional edges and hindrances to be added in there.
Okay, so stuff which we are going to get into later. So you didn't touch the layout or anything like that because
no.
You are very knowledgeable when it comes to layout.
Yeah, I wasn't back then though. This was one of the first things I worked on.
All right.
So this is before I started playing around with layout work.
Cool. So then tell us a bit about how does Guild of Shadows look? Because the comparison isn't that quite fair because I only have the softcover version of Guild of Shadows and Eric obviously have the sweet, lovely hardcover edition of Lankhmar.
Yeah, well, I mean, also Lankhmar is
just a softcover.
Oh, okay.
But the trade dress in Lankhmar is very good, I think, for Pinnacle's products. The only one of Pinnacle's I think that was better is perhaps Rivers Resurrected, which I thought was even better still. So Guild of Shadows is obviously much cruder trade dress. It has a very sort of rough sort of, not sure how you describe it, sort of like a ragged look to it. For some settings, I wouldn't like that, but I think for Guild of Shadows, which is about thieves and cutthroats, performing illegal operations in the dark alleyways, I think that actually works. The thing I'm not so struck on is the mix of artwork in there. And that was actually that I think the publisher didn't have enough artwork when it went to layout and needed to grab some more artwork very quickly. And the artist that he went with produced sort of like modified computer-generated graphics, which I'm not such a fan of anyway, and I think it didn't quite mix so well. But still, I mean, I think the book itself still looks good. Obviously, it's not going to come up to Pinnacle's newer stuff. But if you look at Pinnacle's older products, you look at things like, say, 50 Fathoms or what was the original one, the Evernight.
Evernight, yeah.
And some of these ones, you can see that Pinnacle have come a long way and they've produced an awful lot of books. So considering this was a first-time publisher, I think it's actually pretty good, I got to say.
Yeah, that was my overall impression also. The mixing of art styles is very noticeable, but it never gets to the point where it's really annoying. It's just something you notice. It's like, wait a second, the archetypes are just kind of really cool drawn, and then there's some floor plans, and those look basically, they could be modern, but they were just made a little rougher, so they fit into the art style of the book. It's noticeable, but it's not really.
I think it also depends on the perspective of the viewer as well. Some people have different views towards this. So some people are very picky when it comes to trade dress, and I have to say that since I've been playing around with trade dress myself, I've started becoming a lot more critical of my work and other people's work. But some people don't really care about that sort of thing. They're only interested in the content. And overall, I think it's perfectly good. And I think comparing it to Pinnacle's newer products, obviously a lot of things are going to fall short. I mean, how many licensees can produce stuff that's on par with the latest of Pinnacle's? Well,
yeah,
that's like then comparing Pinnacle's to Hasbro, for example.
Yeah, it's just a question of budget.
Exactly. Yes, because you're not doing this, but very few people are doing the layouts and the artwork themselves. It generally comes down to how much money have you got to pay artists.
Yeah. Do you even have money to pay artists, or do you have to rely on stock art, which you can maybe even modify yourself? Yeah. I mean, most small studios, they don't have a technical director for art, like Pinnacle does.
Most licensees do use stock art. But one of the things that actually this Guild of Shadows does not use stock art, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
I think all of their art is original, so in that respect, that is actually a plus.
I think as well, though, it also depends on what type of table you have, because there are some people that care about that and some people that don't. That, like, you know, if there are players at your table that will look at the book and go, "Oh, this looks like crap. I don't want to play that," you know. But then there are some people that go, "But how does it play? I don't care about how it looks."
Players look at books.
Yeah. Believe it or not, mine actually do. But yeah, there are a lot of players that don't bother.
Yeah. Some actually even buy them. I've never met one except for Richard, but yeah, some do.
Yeah, there's a guy at my table that only owns one book.
All right, so that much for traitorous. Then let's just dive into the deep end. And people say both are trying to do the same. I would disagree. Lankhmar is a setting within itself. It's its own setting. It's trying to bring Fritz Leiber's work into an RPG, which means it provides a city with lands surrounding it and a whole world of lore to explore if you want to go beyond the setting book, if you just read the novels and go into that. Guild of Shadows does something rather different, and I guess, Richard would be the best to explain that.
Well, Lankhmar follows a fairly traditional structure that Pinnacle use in most of their products. And you've got your introduction to the setting, you've got your race creation, you've got the various different new power rules and so on, and then you've got a large amount of background information. And there's adventures in the main book, there's a bunch of adventures in another book as well. But the whole structure of it is fairly standard for a Pinnacle setting, which is you have what is kind of a fairly traditional fantasy setting, and it has a bit of a thief-style flavour to it. But you can play it as any sort of fantasy game, really. The Guild of Shadows is effectively focused on one city, Kirstval. And this particular city is where all of the adventures take place. And the players can take on the role of... all of the roles are thief-style roles. So you choose one of the character types, which is like an enforcer for the guild. Or you can play like a burglar or a pickpocket or a spy or a sort of... I don't know, various different types of what we would call rogue type of characters. And then you have a sort of a sandbox setting which describes various factions, various locations, various NPCs. And there's not really sort of a solid storyline here, but rather the outline of what you need to run all sorts of different sandbox settings in a thief-style world. And it doesn't cover magic or races at all. It actually says in there, these are up to you. And if you want to take this entire city and drop it into any other medieval fantasy setting, you can. It is designed to be kind of slottable into any other. So you could drop it into Shintar or Hellfrost, or you could combine it with Drakenheim, or you could drop it into, I'm not sure if it would work with Winter Eternal, perhaps not. So that's a bit too sort of, but you probably could actually.
I think it would work. Yeah,
it's designed so that you can either use it as its own encapsulated setting, or you can just drop it into other worlds. And I have to say, I very much like that, because one of my difficulties with Savage Worlds is there are so many settings to choose from. And, someone says, "Oh, let's just play Savage Worlds." And okay, it's like about 20 or 30 settings I'd like to try, and I'd really like to try them all. And you're just not going to do that. But if you have slottable settings like this, what you can do is you can say, okay, we're going to play Shintar, but we're going to drop Kirstval into Shintar in this location, and we're going to have, during the campaign, a few adventures there where you can meet some of these NPCs, you can interact with these factions, and maybe you could even start the campaign there. You could say, okay, you can choose from among these archetypes all these new edges and hindrances. You can add them to your current game. You can add in the poison rules. So, in some ways, it's also, as well as being its own setting, it's also like a thieves guide. You can use it to add a lot more thief-style attributes to your current game.
Like a thief companion?
Yeah, kind of like that. So what Lankhmar is like a full fantasy setting with a sort of a thief-style theme to it. Guild of Shadows is really a kind of a sandbox setting combined with a toolkit that you can combine with other products. It's one of those settings that you can easily loot for additional content, for additional characters, for additional rules, and so on. And that doesn't work so well in a lot of settings which have very specific setting rules.
To me, that opens it up, because I really, even before for like doing this podcast, I thought the Guild of Shadows was essentially Lankhmar with the serial numbers filed off. I didn't even know that.
No.
And now, like, knowing that completely changes the way I think about it. So I think that both of them kind of have their place. I mean, you could even put is it Kirstval?
Kirstval is the city, yeah.
Yeah, you could even put that in Lankhmar if you wanted to. Well, in the
Yeah. Well, putting a city into a city is
no. I mean, not in that city, but you could put it in the
in the same world,
in the
yes.
world. Yeah,
You could say, it could be the characters have to visit another city which is known for its real cutthroat politics. And, and this is the thing, you're playing any fantasy campaign and your characters go to some city and the GM's like, I need some sort of city that the players are going to visit, but there's already lots going on. So what am I going to do? And this is, you can take it because it's so encapsulated, it doesn't rely on anything else, it doesn't rely on other bits of geography, other parts of the world, other races or anything. You can just take this whole thing, you stick it in there, and it looks like you've spent months preparing this city for the players to explore.
I mean,
that'd be interact with.
That'd be pretty funny, right? If their characters were adventuring in Lankhmar, right? They get fed up with all the politics, the fact that it's like a seedy, disgusting place, right? And they venture out into Naywan and they're like, I hate this place, right? Let's go find a new city. And then they adventure throughout Naywan for months, and eventually they're like, oh, this place seems nice.
It's just the same.
Right.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Or Gary could put in 50 fathoms. How about that, Gary?
There's enough already inside of 50 fathoms, so we don't need to make it any. It's like putting icing on a cake that's already got icing on it. Who does that?
Oh my god, I would absolutely do that. If I had access to that much icing, I would totally do that.
You can, one of the things about the 50 fathoms. 50 fathoms has got a lot of information, loads and loads of hooks for adventures, loads of savage tales. But what it doesn't have is like a city that's really covered in extensive detail. So if you're traveling around and the players say, okay, we want to go to a city for a while and actually spend a few sessions exploring the city, you're going to have to really start coming up with that information yourself. But if you then say, okay, I'm just going to take Kirstval, drop that in there, and now these people are pirates. The guild is more of a pirate type guild, and suddenly you've got a location which has a huge amount of detail that you can just use.
But to give like a little bit more background on what Lankhmar is like as in the setting, I know, as you said, Richard, it's kind of like more of a fantasy setting rather than a like a thieves toolkit as Guild of Shadows is. This is kind of like you don't necessarily just play thieves, not that you would in that book as well, but in this you can play any types of characters, but it's got a whole world in there called Naywan, and then you have but a lot of the adventures center around Lankhmar, as the book suggests, and Lankhmar is like a pretty shady city that like kind of always stinks and stuff like this, and you tend to have run-ins with this thing called the Thieves Guild, and that's kind of like a olden times mafia kind of thing, and they run the place. They tell you what to do, and your characters have run-ins with them, and they'll often give you missions which will often involve thievery and things like this, but it would often be like mafia type things. So it might be this guy stole something and it was unauthorized by the Thieves Guild, so you have to go and sort him out, or it might be that they are asking you to steal something or something like this, but it can be varying different things like those types of adventures, but they often revolve around the Thieves Guild because they have a lot of power in that city, which is why it is City of Thieves. That's why it's that kind of thing, but you don't necessarily always play thieves. You can play we did an actual play of it on our podcast, and we had a big bruiser type guy. We did have a pickpocket type guy, but we had a mage, which I played. We had loads of different types of characters in there. But yeah, you can play all types of guys, but it's City of Thieves because it's pretty much run by the Thieves Guild, who are very powerful.
But in Guild of Shadows, you also have the Guild of Shadows, which is the Thieves Guild there.
Right,
and they also are a major influence. But it kind of starts off with the first adventure that you're recruited into this Guild of Shadows. So then the adventures are you rising up through the ranks of this guild, and you get information about the various leaders of this guild. Some of them are kind of known figures, some of them are keep their identities secret, and it really is. It's from the inside, and it's also supposed to be, your opposition are, say, like the town guards and so on, and it's supposed to be not really about combat so much as finding creative solutions. I guess a bit like the old computer game Thief, if you know that.
Yeah.
So the idea is that if the players just run in and start attacking everyone, they get killed.
Yeah.
Because even the city guards are quite tough in this. So it's really supposed to be that you're not kind of heroes that are interacting with the Thieves Guild, but rather you are thieves in this guild and you're trying to perform operations which aren't like outright fights.
Yeah, which is kind of different to what this Lankhmar as a setting is trying to do, because that's sword and sorcery. The heroes are supposed to be those larger than life heroes. If they get into a fight with 10 city guards, they're probably going to win because that's what's expected of them. They might get bloodied up, but they are actually kind of supposed to win.
You know, a very good example is my friend. She when she played Lankhmar, she'd never played an RPG, or at least she hadn't in about 15 years, right? And she picked one of the characters, one of the archetypes, is wearing a hood, and she was like, her only sort of frame of reference for a similar game was Assassin's Creed, and she's a big fan of that. Now, obviously, that's thematically like quite different, but in that you do a lot of sneaking and you do this and you try and find somewhat creative solutions. I mean, it's very railroady because it's a crap game, but my point is after that you do all this swashbuckling fighting. Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of what Lankhmar is kind of like. It's a little bit swashbuckly and things like that. If you try to find the creative solutions, but then you have these sort of like fun kind of cinematic battles and things like this once that goes south. And in the books there's moments like that, and there's these bit during the first book where they try to sneak in by pretending to be beggars, and one of them straps his leg behind his back, and they even pour booze over themselves to smell like booze, and then when they get in and they're discovered, they're then legging it down the hallway, stabbing people and things like this. And it's like it's that type of fun. And even on the covers, you've got them sneaking over the rooftops on one of them, but then on another they're fighting people, and it's things like this. So it's very different in terms of flavour and the way that players are expected to behave.
All right. Well, speaking of that, pretty good transition to, player characters. So we'll start that one off with Lankhmar, since it's a fully fleshed out setting and is produced by Pinnacle, so there's obviously a very detailed character creation. So what can you tell us about that, Eric?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course you can play a thief, and we talked about bodyguards type, the thugs, but what's really good about this setting too is the magic system, because I mean, sure, it still follows how Savage Worlds does it, but it becomes more of a ritualistic type of magic where you have to spend time to actually cast your spells. If you don't, you suffer a big penalty. And so the longer you take, the better you are at casting your spells. So you've got different types of magic there. You got the white magic that heals, which is kind of the default one you want to take. You've got elemental magic. Anybody that's played fantasy game before knows what that's about. But then you have the black magic, which unlocks more powers, because some powers, the more destructive ones, are exclusive to black magic. But when you use black magic, you start suffering the effects of it. Your body changes, your personality changes. You morph into this dark creature over time by using it more. So that to me is really good. I mean, if you like the low fantasy, low magic type of fantasy, Lankhmar will give you that. You don't have spell slingers, that will wade into battle and throw bolts and blasts all around. I mean, you can do it, but like I said, you have to take time to cast your spells. So that makes it, you have to pick your spot a little better. Makes it special. And that's basically the type of characters you can play. You got the Bravo, which is the swashbuckling hero, the one that likes to fight on the street, kind of a champion. You've got the thief, of course, like I said, a thug. You can play a noble. You can play the healer with the white magic. And then, of course, the races. That's where, usually in Sword and Sorcery, you keep it to humans only. That's the only race available. But in Lankhmar, you've got a couple more options that are really cool. I like them all. And when we played for that actual play, there was a variety there. First of all, even though you've got humans again, you've got different cultures. You've got the Lankhmar people from Lankhmar, Kleshite that are they're kind of Middle Eastern type. You got the Northerner, the barbarians, and the Mingle, which are the kind of Genghis Khan type of fighter on horseback and bows and all that. So even though you're human, you have a different racial profile, depending on the culture that you pick. Then you got the ghouls. Basically, you look like a skeleton with a jelly skin over your bones, and you don't like to cover up, so you look creepy. You need to eat meat. So,
and you have an instant minus. Is it -4 to charisma, or is it -10?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. But yeah, you look pretty gross.
It can rack up. Yeah, -4 when you interact with humans, of course, because they don't trust you. Then you've got the ratlings, and those are people that bred with rats. I don't know how that works, but they're like really. Well, Gary can tell us about that.
Let me tell you.
No, but the thing in Lankhmar is that you've got an underworld in the sewers where rat people live. And, if you've read the books, at some point they sort of invade the whole city, right? So, but the ratlings are, a union of humans and those rat people, those rat folks. And, they blended quite well for the most part. But, they're scared of cats, of course, and have low light vision. But when people discover, usually it's like a weird mutation they have on their body, like shorter legs and that kind of thing. They walk funny. So when they get discovered, of course, they're mistrusted by people. But, I like the fact that these are basically new races that you don't get in other settings. You don't need the dwarf, you don't need the elf, you don't need the halfling. You bring in the ghouls and the ratlings, and that's pretty badass to me. That's about it.
For those people who want to play something special, and for everyone else, there's a wide variety of human versions.
Cultures, yeah.
Cultures, yeah.
Yeah, so you don't have to be a boring human, even though I don't find humans boring. But I know Richard and I have had that discussion before that, nobody wants to play a human. But then again, I'm like, how can you relate to an elf? You don't even know what an elf feels like, but you can play a human because you know what a human is. But then again, in fantasy, to me, mostly it's just humans with pointy ears and humans with big beards, and that's basically how it is. So.
They have Scottish accents, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Okay, so I assume there are edges and hindrances tailored to Lankhmar and that magic system, since it seems to be rather special to the setting.
Yeah, there's a couple. If I'm being honest, there's not that many.
No, but it's pretty.
It's the 26 edges and 6 hindrances.
Yeah, that's pretty typical of any Savage Worlds setting. To me, I don't think you need that many because you only get so many advances. So,
fair enough. Yeah,
how many edges?
one comment I'd like to make as well, though. One of my disappointments with Lankhmar was that 11 of the edges and 2 of the hindrances were lifted directly out of Solomon Kane.
Yeah, I noticed that.
One of the edges also came from Deadlands. I've seen some of them in 50 Fathoms as well. So it feels kind of like they just were trying to fill out the book with just lifting a few things here and there and just copy them across.
I think part of the reason being is because the that the magic system is exactly the same here in Solomon Kane, because I'm currently playing a Solomon Kane campaign. That might be part of the reason. I did notice that, but I don't know why that is. But yeah, I was a little disappointed in that as well. But I'm not fussed. I mean, if the thing is, if you haven't played, if you don't own one or the other, you're not going to be disappointed by that. You know.
Right. But here's the thing. Some people do buy books because they really want the setting. Others do it because they want to loot it for new ideas. And I think if you're buying the book because you want to loot it for content, then that's where Guild of Shadows really shines. Not only because all of the stuff can be lifted and dropped into another setting, but also it has new rules for things like poisons and diseases. Not diseases, sorry, but poisons and disguises, and rules for gang members, and like a whole load of new hindrances and edges as well.
Yeah.
And if you're really just looking for a book to loot for content to drop into your own setting, then I think that's where Guild of Shadows will definitely pull ahead. So Lankhmar is great if you want to play in the Lankhmar world, and if you don't know the other Savage Worlds books, then you won't know that a lot of this stuff is duplicated.
Yeah.
But if you're one of these people that's looking for a solid setting, particularly if it's your first time and you like the works that it's based on, then yeah, of course you're going to go for that.
But
if you're looking for something to loot, then
at the time when I got this, obviously I did own Solomon Kane at the time. I just don't think I'd read through Solomon Kane properly. So at the time when I got this, I just started reading Fritz Leiber's books, and I was just like, this is incredible. I'm really into this, and I was loving it because I felt like it did such a good job of replicating it, and so I wasn't necessarily fussed. But like you say, yeah, there's a lot of people that just buy the books because they want to take this idea and that idea and make their own stuff with it. So yeah, I totally get you. That's a fair criticism, and I do understand that. But on another hand, you.
Well, my point is not to say that it's what you should or shouldn't use a book for, but really just I think that depending on what people are using a book for, I think you should take that sort of thing into account. So if someone says, I want a setting to run, then fair enough. They're saying, I want to run like a thief style adventure or series of adventures in my campaign setting, and I want a book where I can lift a few things.
Absolutely, and I think the way I think the way that this is advertised as well is it's Lankhmar City of Thieves. They're trying to advertise it as a book that you can use to do loads of different stuff, with, and use to maybe lift ideas from it to a certain extent. So yeah, I do think it's a fair criticism.
Yeah.
There's also you talk quite a bit about the races and the magic system in Lankhmar. Yeah. I would just like to read this short paragraph from Guild of Shadows. It says here, because the city of Cursed-Vile is designed to be dropped into any existing world or campaign, no information on races or magic is provided here. If elves are commonly seen in your world, then feel free to create an elf character. Lazy. So it's like completely the opposite perspective. So whether you like it or not, if you were talking about how if you don't like dwarves, you can leave them out. But this approaches it from the other perspective. They're just not there. By default, there's only humans and there's no magic. And then you just kind of, if you want to drop it into a world which has magic, then you use the magic rules from that world. So if you want to drop it into Lankhmar, you use the Lankhmar magic system, and it's not going to conflict with anything. You can take the Lankhmar races, drop them in, it's not going to conflict with anything.
Well, we were talking earlier about Flash Gordon, how that's just come out. Could I, for instance, use it with that?
I don't see why not, but that's more, well, you could, yeah, I guess you could do.
So Flash Gordon, he accidentally goes for a time portal.
Well, it doesn't necessarily even have to be that much medieval, because you could easily put in guns as well. You could just say that the guys have got guns. So it wouldn't really be a modern day setting. But if you wanted to own like the Flash Gordon stuff, they have swords and stuff in there as well, don't they? I think they have.
Yeah, good point. A lot of them do. That would actually work. I'm starting to think Guild of Shadows is better.
Well, it's just a different objective, a different goal. It's just designed to do something a bit different to the kind of kitchen sink style settings.
Yeah. We should have got someone that was worse at convincing.
Well, coming back to some of the options that are in Guild of Shadows that are special to Guild of Shadows, you referenced poison rules, for example. So there are a lot of rules in Guild of Shadows that help you play a thief campaign that is not centered like many others are on combat, because thieves don't want to do combat. They want to be in and out without being seen. They want to get to complete their objective without being noticed. So there are some rules in Guild of Shadows that support that very well. So why don't you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. Well, okay. First of all, it's worth pointing out, of course, Guild of Shadows is for Savage Worlds, and characters in Savage Worlds tend to be very good at fighting. But so combat is going to be fairly inevitable. But it's still the idea is not that people are immediately charging into combat. There are things in there to encourage people to find other solutions. You see it in the adventures, and you see it in the rules, and the poison rules, for example, which is, I didn't actually write the poison rules myself, so I feel comfortable talking about that. I did make some slight adjustments to them, but poisons in Guild of Shadows are very strong. I mean, you see in Savage Worlds the poisons are very strong as well, but you can't usually use them as a player option. But at Guild of Shadows, you can create some really, really powerful poisons, but it allows you to kind of design your own poisons. So depending on how easy they are or how easy it is to poison someone. So, at one extreme, you might have to literally feed them the poison, which is not going to be something you could do in combat. You'd have to then sneak into their house. If you want poisons that you can actually just cut somebody and it poisons them, then that's very difficult to produce. And likewise, you have these different scales for different things, which is, for example, how deadly it is, how fast it takes effect. So if you want a poison that's going to kill someone outright in combat, you're talking about one that acts instantly, results in death, and I think there's 4 different dials on there. Is there? Yeah. So you've got so we're just looking it up in the book now. So you've got the delivery method, the offset time, the effect. So there's 3 different options, and if you want the top level in each, then it requires such expensive and rare ingredients that you have to basically do an adventure to get this poison. So then that's when the complexity comes in. So if you want to assassinate somebody like really flawlessly, you're then going to have to undertake like 1 or 2 adventures to actually get the ingredients you need to do that. So then the focus of the adventure is on preparing for your assassination attempt, Or you can go for weaker poisons. So you might hit somebody and you poison them, but you've then got to let them run away because it's going to take them another hour before they drop dead. Or if you want something that's really fast acting, you might be able to do that. You hit them with an attack, it takes effect immediately, but they just get a bit of diarrhea, and they're going to carry on fighting. So you have to weigh out the pros and cons. Whether if it's a poison that you inject into someone, then that's going to be easier than one that just is based on contact. If you just like touch them and they're poisoned, that's going to be really difficult to produce.
Happens to Gary all the time.
What, poison with gaps of diarrhea?
Yeah, didn't that happen to you recently, Gary? Have you been messing with the Guild of Shadows?
They've got the rarer poison. The rarer poison, then you'd be dead, But so you've got to fly there, Gary.
Somebody poisoned me for 5 days straight. That's all I know. 5 days, 5 solid days.
So they paid for quantity, not quality.
Did you just keep failing your vigor roll?
Did I keep which?
You just keep failing your vigor roll. Was that the problem?
Oh, repeatedly. I thought I must have started.
These are not the same saving throws.
Yeah, I sat down to play some Savage Worlds and brought my narrative dice system, and I rolled them once and went, "What does this mean?" And then that was it.
Then you spent 5 hours reading the dice, and then you realised, you've got diarrhea.
It was a good thing I was in the bathroom the whole time.
All right. So
Guild of Shadows also provides a kind of mission generator.
Yeah, it's just a very simple adventure generator. It's okay. It's just
more like guidelines for and you have to do a lot of work yourself for prepping it.
Most settings have some sort of adventure generator. Some of them are very simple. Some of them are a lot more complicated. The one in Guild of Shadows is a pretty straightforward. It works perfectly fine.
Is there an adventure generator in Lankhmar, Beric?
Yes. It's not in the main book, the City of Thieves. It's in I believe the Savage Tales.
And
that one
I've got it in front of me now. I can't find it, but it does exist, listeners. But speaking of the Savage Tales, that's an extremely good book. It's one of the best Savage Tales books that I own. It's better than I think it is the best one I own. I haven't admittedly read all of the Pinnacle ones, but this is the only Savage Tales book that I got and read cover to cover instantly. I found it really, really enjoyable to read. All of the adventures that you get in this book are utterly incredible. So yeah, really good. But
yeah, actually, it's in the Savage Foes of Naewon. It's 10 pages. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, what you're used to in from Pinnacle. D20s now. I don't know why Pinnacle has moved away from using cards, but yeah, seems like a lot of random tables now use D20s instead of cards, which I think is a bit lame.
They had to find a use for that dice, for one thing.
Yeah.
Secondly, could you guys hit your mics with those books a few more times?
I didn't hit my mic.
Maybe no. Eric's dropping them in the box set, and you could just hear it go dong.
Yeah. No, I mean you got what the adventure type, caught up in the events. That's how it gets started, and then you got so many tables in there depending on what you roll for it. So many factors that goes into creating your adventure. Personally, I've tried using adventure generators before, and I don't know. They don't really work for me.
I don't like them either.
Yeah, I don't know why. I just maybe because I can come up with ideas on my own and I don't need them, but I can't really attest to their how good they are and that kind of thing.
I think they're sometimes nice to get an idea. I did something similar with a other RPG, which I won't name because obviously, as we know, all other RPGs that aren't Savage Worlds are bad. But it had a system called the Life Path Generator. Cyberpunk 2020 was what it was called, but I'm not allowed to mention it. But the point is, in that you could roll up your character's background, and we never actually ran with the full thing that was rolled up, but we ended up using it for inspiration. And I think sometimes the adventure generators can be good for that. So this one seems pretty deep, so it might be good for that kind of thing. But yeah,
maybe they could come up with like a narrative adventure generating system where you just roll a bunch of dice and create an adventure.
Maybe it could be. Maybe they could change the dice system of this to do something like that during the game too.
That'd be sweet.
Now, what I'll do usually with those generators is look at them, and it gives you an idea of the elements that should be in a typical story for that setting.
Yeah,
I think that's where it helps. Same thing with pre-gens and a one sheet. It helps you wrap your head around what the what
the setting wants to achieve, how it wants to feel at the table, how it wants to feel when you run it. So you mentioned an entire book, Savage Tales. So is that just Savage Tales, or is there an actual plot point campaign for Lankhmar?
There's a mini one that you get with the GM screen. Yeah, this one here, Eyes of Goromush, and it's a four point plot point campaign, and I like it quite a bit because plot point campaigns usually have typically 8 to 12 episodes to them, and then you have to insert. I mean, you don't have to, but it's kind of implied that you add your own stories in between. And to me, the sweet spot for a campaign is about 10 to 12 sessions or episodes. So you take 8 to 12, and then you add maybe 2 or 3 in between, and you're already up at 25, 30, 40 sessions or adventures for a campaign. And usually you don't get to finish it. But with this one, it's 4, and you just insert maybe, 6 to 8 more in between in there, and you got a full campaign.
Not to mention, I think that even if you just played this straight up with no tales inserted in there, the original novels that Fritz Leiber wrote, they were actually really short in comparison to regular fantasy novels. If you look at
novellas.
They're novellas, and they were they never outstayed their welcome. And he was actually quite a genius in terms of getting a lot of backstory and detail into his worlds without having to just do a bunch of exposition and just fart out a bunch of words onto a page. He was very, very good at doing that, and so that's why I really liked his writing, and that's what his adventures do in here as well. They give you a lot, well, not his adventures, but Pinnacle's adventures. They managed to capture that feel. You can sit down, play one of these adventures, and it'll be like it'll give you loads of detail on what the world's like without having to explain loads to the players. And this 4-part adventure is actually very, very good at capturing that feel of that short book, but giving you loads of detail. And that's why I think that even if you just played the 4-part adventure, your players would be pretty satisfied with that. If you're between campaigns and want a short thing to play, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I want to say one thing is that the Lankhmar adventures in the adventure book reminds me very much of the Savage Tales of Horror. I don't know if you've seen those ones at all.
Yeah.
There's basically a book which is 95 pages is the standard for Pinnacle's new ones, around about 95 pages or so, and it's like a series of independent adventures in the horror one. So it's a similar sort of thing here, except of course they're all set in the same the same world, but they don't follow on from each other. And I was a bit surprised about that because I was used to the kind of the plot point campaign format, and I was expecting something more like that.
It's quite easy to get them to follow on from each other though, because they're all linked in some way. Like I played 2 in a row with the same characters, and we did kind of just did an 8-hour play session of this once, and literally all we did was, as soon as they finished the Thieves Guild, as soon as they got back to the Thieves Guild and finished their mission, the bloke who gave them their pay was just like, you know what, I like your style. We've just had another mission come in. You down? And the guys was like, hell yeah, we are. And like the coins were like heavy in their hand, and they were absolutely loving it. So they were just like, you know what, we're in. And I had some of the characters from the previous adventure show up, and it's really easy. They're very easily linkable because they're in the same city. You could have recurring characters, from this bar or from a previous adventure. It works quite well that way, but they'll be self-contained episodes of a story, but not necessarily like an overarching plot kind of thing, but they can be easily linked in small ways, which gives it a coherent feel.
Yeah, I mean, because you got 2 in the main book, the City of Thieves, and then you've got 3 more in Savage Foes of Newan, and then the Savage Tales of the Thieves Guild. You've got like over a dozen there. Then plus Eyes of Goramush. And of course, the test drive, because the latest test drive is an adventure. It's Triple Cross. It's an adventure for Lankhmar. So with all that, you could run it for quite a while. Plus with the adventure generator. So
it's not just about the length though. What I always like is about having the overarching plot line, like a big major plot that follows through, ties the stories together. And I think you often see in the plot point campaigns, the dedicated plot point campaigns, that you have this like a really destructive finale that like in 50 Fathoms or Necessarily Evil, it really changes the whole setting. So if you want to carry on after that, it's very difficult. And I wonder if perhaps part of the problem is because it was a licensed work and a very famous work that they had, the Pinnacle didn't want to kind of trash this world or even do any major changes to it with the campaign.
It's funny because I don't know if you've read the original novellas, but it trashes itself in the first one. Yeah, okay. It's funny because I think if anyone's...
Right, but you're talking about the original author doing that, though. Not talking about some other company coming along and...
Yeah, I know that, but I'm saying that if anyone who's into it was familiar with this, I think that you would know that it's okay to do that and continue with it. But yeah, you're right. If you were coming into this new, that would be hard. That would be hard for Pinnacle to do it. And yeah, I'm almost certain that's why they haven't done anything that changes it up and haven't done like a big plot point thing like that. But I feel like it would be very, very easy to do and to attach something like that to these little stories in there. You know,
yeah, I think it depends how long you want to play it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like 50 Fathoms. Once you're done with the plot point, I mean, there's the story's over. There's nothing that you can do there. And
you could launch a new story in the same world, though.
Yeah, but it's typical to Savage Worlds, right? People that are used to it from the beginning, they expect a big change, like in the Flood or in 50 Fathoms. But then you've got people coming in and they rather play it more like Hellfrost, where you can play it for 20 years and still the world is still going to be the same. I mean, there's still stories that you can play in there. So
I don't know.
Even, for example, Shine Tower, which has a plot point campaign coming out soon, I think, they have major world events, even though it doesn't trash the world.
Right.
Really big storylines, and
that's
they
a living
that
campaign. Yeah, that's
with their actual plot point campaign that they're producing now. I think that was based on some of this living campaign.
I totally
what do you
get
think,
that.
Gary?
Sorry,
but I think it's very difficult when you've got a licensed campaign setting and it's trying to appeal to the fans of that original work, as was the case with Lankhmar. If you then try and introduce some epic storyline of your own that's going to be a twist, the people who you're aiming it at, who are the fans of the original work, are likely to get pretty pissed off if you then try and take artistic liberties with their beloved setting.
One of the things you got to remember is they could have. I think they could have quite easily. I think they could have quite easily written something that wouldn't have done that. For example, they could have introduced an enemy to the city that they were trying to fight, and then they could have beaten that. But maybe they didn't think of that.
Yeah. Would it have been epic enough to have actually been interesting for a plot point campaign?
It could have been.
Because one of the things about plot point campaigns is that the players like to, or certainly in my case, I think the players like to feel that they're really making a big difference in the world.
Of course,
it's not just that they're doing some very minor job. An epic campaign to collect, 5 rat tails or something. For the,
no, I know that. I know that. I'm just saying. And anyway, for me, like, I tend to not play big plot point campaigns. I tend to start off with published stuff to get all the characters familiar with each other, then go off and do my own thing, because that's what I do. But yeah, I mean, that's why I guess it's not an issue for me, and why I like this format, because I'll then stick Savage Tales into my campaign. But yeah, so I reckon it'll probably be a problem for a lot of players, but and GMs, but not really for me. That's why I think I like this so much, why it appeals to me so much, and probably a lot of people, but not like, I reckon it's probably a problem for a lot of people why there's not a plot point in there.
Yeah, well, Guild of Shadows does come with a plot point campaign.
Nope, it does not.
It does not?
No, it has 3 adventures originally, and I think in the printed book it has those 3 adventures, and then there was a 4th adventure that came out recently.
Gutted.
And these are generally more detailed adventures than the Savage Tale types. So maybe on par with the larger of the Lankhmar ones. But the adventures are a different style altogether. I mean, the Lankhmar adventures are kind of describing. Well, they're kind of describing an adventure kind of thing, but the Guild of Shadow ones, they really describe scenes, like places. For example, like one of them is a heist operation. You have to basically break into this guy's mansion and steal something. But the adventure's all focused on the people who are at the party, what they're doing, what sort of defenses are in place, how who's got the keys to different places. So it's really providing you with a setup, so that there is a kind of, it's all around this one particular location, and then it's left up to the players how they're going to find out what defenses are in place, which exits they're going to use, what sort of means they're going to use to try and get hold of keys, will they try and pick the locks, what sort of traps are there, and so on. So it's describing a kind of like a location, and then giving you ideas for how the players might approach it. So it's kind of describing a scenario, and it's very much left up to the individual groups how they approach this particular challenge, which I quite like. It's different. It's different to the other adventures. I like both approaches. I have to say I don't have a strong preference, but the Guild of Shadows is a bit different to some of the other adventures. I think it makes a nice change of pace.
I would say Lankhmar's pretty. It's just standard to what Pinnacle usually do.
Yeah. That's just good. It works, It works. I would say that actually the Lankhmar adventures are longer than most of the Savage Tales, quite a lot longer. quite a lot more detailed. And this is why I mentioned the Savage Tales of Horror, because that's also a similar format. Whereas with the older Pinnacle adventures, the Savage Tales were typically around about 1,000 words, plus or minus 25%. These ones tend to be a few pages each.
Right.
So they're quite a lot bigger in Lankhmar, which is also perfectly fine. I mean, I don't have strong preferences. I like to try different types of adventure and different approaches to adventures. None of these are on the same sort of level of detail as you get in, say, a D&D or Pathfinder adventure path or a module, adventure module. And those tend to really be taking you step by step and covering everything, which is a bit too much detail for my tastes, because it means so much reading. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always a bit of a toss-up. You've got too much information, there's too much to read, it's annoying, but if there's too little, then you have to make it all up yourself. So
Best comment ever, Richard. Best comment ever. Too much to read. It's become sort of my pet peeve. Yeah, it's become sort of my pet peeve with Savage Worlds. There's so much good stuff, but there's so much to read. And as the DM, you're the guy that reads it all the time. So just like you guys said earlier, man, your players buy a book and you're all like, what? Because the reality is it's they just sit down and expect you to tell them a story and they want to interact with it, but you're the guy doing all the work, man. It's a butt ton of shit to read.
Funnily enough, that's what kept me away from Hellfrost for a while now, because there's just so much material for it. I know I can just take the player's guide for the players and just take it's not called the Game Master's Handbook, I think it's the Gazetteer for Hellfrost. And I could work with that for years and years and years to come. But then I'd feel like I would do the setting injustice if I just ignore all the other stuff that's there. And ironically, that's what leads me to not touching the setting at all.
Yeah, you know what I did? You kind of get that sort of same feeling with Deadlands, because there's just so many books. And if you're coming into it now, there's there's so much material for Deadlands. But what you got to do, or at least what I did anyway, was I found out what the first one was, which is the Flood. And I just started there. And that's it. Never mind the rest of the stuff. Pick the first one in the series, start there and go. But man, but
with Deadlands, those are plot point campaigns. Those are each plot point campaign books. And with Hellfrost, it's not campaign material you're getting. You're just getting information about different lands, about different cities, about new people in there. It's not even a campaign you're reading. You're just reading up on the state of the world as it is. You're basically reading an atlas and Wikipedia for Hellfrost.
Yeah.
Well, at least you know a lot about it.
So, should we wrap up?
Well, there's one more thing I would like to have a short look at, and that is NPCs covered in the books, because Guild of Shadows provides a quite extensive library of NPCs for the Guild of Shadows as is, but there's also an extra chapter for famous scoundrels and rogues.
That was one I created, actually, but it wasn't originally part of the book. I think when they created the print-on-demand version, they just decided to add all of the extra stuff in.
Oh, okay.
So originally, the publisher just asked me if I could create 10 famous rogues from history.
So like Robin Hood and...
Yeah. I think I ended up creating about 30 of them, which was including Robin Hood and his merry-go-round. But also I designed each of them to be valid starting characters. So, if you're playing a Robin Hood campaign, you could actually play Robin Hood and his merry men, and Maid Marian, and actually have them as already pre-created characters. And I think this also ties in with the strength of Guild of Shadows as a kind of a rogue's handbook, that you could really use it for this sort of thing. So, it's got, for example, with my approach to the ages, where I added Highwayman and Urban Ranger, because one of the issues I had with Savage Worlds and the Thief Age, Thief Age is a very good age if you're playing a thief, but in Guild of Shadows, Thief Age becomes a no-brainer. And I didn't want everybody to take Thief Age, so but I didn't want to change any of the rules or drop the edges, so I added 2 other professional edges which also add stealth. The idea being that you've got 3 different ways that you can get that massively useful stealth bonus, which was either Thief or Highwayman or Urban Ranger. And so then, of course, because these the Highwaymen, I then had to have Dick Turpin, who Harrison would probably know. Dick Turpin was a famous English highwayman.
I'm afraid I don't know the name, sorry.
Well, you better look him up then, Harrison. And there's a whole load of criminals, ranging from sort of medieval to sort of more modern, and it was just a bit of fun, just to really kind of show how you could create all these famous rogues and criminals from history using the core rules and the extensions in Guild of Shadows.
Cool. So Lankhmar, I think, provides stats for some of the more famous inhabitants of Lankhmar, well, namely Farford and the Grey Mouser, and I think a few others. Or am I wrong there, Eric?
Soz.
Or Harrison?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Harrison.
I got a bit excited. Sorry, but yeah, you got like even minor characters from the book in here. But yeah, you got Farford and the Grey Mouser in here. And then you've got like minor characters in here, but you've got also just stats for like regular things like the city guards. And this is all in a book called The Savage Foes of Nawan. And it's like, it's not just NPCs, but it's also regular enemies. Things like Warcat, things like Giant Leech, things like Dog Wolf. Everything's in here. So it's basically NPCs and beasts, basically. They're all statted in here. So you've got a bunch of...
But it is an additional book you'd have to buy.
It is. That's the unfortunate thing about this set that I'm not that keen on, is they split it into 3 books. You do have to buy an extra book, but...
there are some in the city of Thebes.
Yes,
Thebes, you've got about 10... No,
there's
closer
20
to 15
something
pages. Yeah, 15 pages of NPCs and enemies. It's just that the Savage Foes just gives you more. It's just a bestiary, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The only reason that I got this in addition to like the main book, when the main book has so many, is because the Savage Foes book is so good. Because the flavor text in here is so awesome, because you've got like the gods as well as like some really cool NPCs and stuff like this. Because in the City of Thieves book you have Farford and Grey Mouser, but you have them when they're young, teen and old as well, which is pretty cool. So you can play them you could either fight them or be them at different states or whatever. So I think that's pretty cool.
One question, I don't know if you guys brought this up or if you were just talking about it, but price, shouldn't that be a major factor?
Oh, it is a major factor. I mean, the Lankhmar, all of these books, right? I bought them all separately because I couldn't find a retailer of the box set in this country. Set me back about £200.
Wow.
No, it's not. It wasn't that. I think that each book, cost me about 15 quid, but I had to really shop around to get those prices. I got one from like Keep on the Borderlands shop. I got one from Leisure Games. I got one from like all different shops just to get them at that price. It was bloody hard. Most places sell them for 25 quid each, which is coincidentally the amount it costs to play Sports at Hogwarts, quid each. So it's really hard to get them for that price. So yeah, very difficult.
Yeah.
And so all in all, about 35 quid.
Yeah, I mean the PDFs are $10 each, and the soft cover are $20 each, and then the box set I think is $70, Gary, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. So I mean it's just typical price for Pinnacle products.
But how about Guild of Shadows? How much is that?
Yeah, the PDF for Guild of Shadows should be around $10. I don't know, only seeing euro.
Yeah, I had it open. It's 11. I just was checking because I asked the question, but it's $11.21.
Well, now that we have all the information, I'd say it's time to put it down to a vote.
Well, the only unbiased opinion here is Gary's, so.
So he gets the deciding vote.
Or maybe Manuel too, maybe.
No, because Fritz Leiber is a German author.
He's not. He's American.
Oh, whatever.
I think his parents emigrated to the United States, but Fritz Leiber is a born American. Could have run for president.
Did he?
Nope.
Then he's German.
Oh man!
So what do you think, Gary?
I don't know. I kind of feel like you've got two sort of separate. You've got a cake and you've got a pie. Is really what it boils down to. You've got if you want a setting, you pick up Lankhmar, and if you want just a bunch of good material to play a good Thieves games, pick up Guild of Shadows. You know, it seems to be more of like, here's some good Thieves stuff, Guild of Shadows. Here's an entire setting built in a city with a whole bunch of stuff piled on top.
Which
I personally
some thieves.
Yeah, I would. I think I bought the Guild of Shadows. I think I actually have the book kicking around here somewhere, and that's the route that I went. Because at this stage of the game, Goon. I'm looking at my stuff. Goon, Fear Agent. There's 2 that I haven't even looked at. Haven't even played them yet. I was harassing you on Facebook the other day about that. When are we going to play some Goon, Lamoureux? It's like we bought these books and we just don't play them because we have so much material.
Because the Goon sucks.
Yeah. Guild of Shadows.
Shiny.
They're shiny. They're shiny. Guild of Shadows. That's the way I'm going.
Okay. And Eric, what way are you voting?
Well, I mean, Guild of Shadows look very interesting. I don't have it. I'm a big Lankhmar fan, but I can see how Guild of Shadows could be useful, even in Lankhmar, if I wanted to, just to make the Thieves Guild more fleshed out, give more options. So I don't know. I don't really have a preference other than I'm a big Lankhmar fan.
Sadly, that is not how this segment works. You choose or you die.
He's right.
Well, Lankhmar then.
All right, there you go.
How dare you?
Harrison.
Can you put Lankhmar in 50 fathoms?
He already said you could.
No, Guild of Shadows.
Guild of Shadows.
Yeah, you could put Lankhmar in 50 fathoms.
Somebody mute Lamoureux's mic. Had enough of him.
Okay, so, for my vote, I think, as Eric said, I think that what I might do is buy Guild of Shadows and use it to make some of the NPCs in Lankhmar a bit more interesting, make some of the skills that they're using against my PCs a bit more interesting. For example, the poisons and some of the abilities they have and things like this. I think that would make it genuinely awesome. But my vote goes to Lankhmar because I love the books and as in the novellas and things like this. And the reason that I bought it was to literally emulate the books that I was reading that Eric recommended to me, and it did that perfectly, and that's why I like them. So yeah, that's my vote. But I will buy Guild of Shadows because Richard contributed to it, and I'm really sorry I haven't bought it yet.
All right, so then, Richard, your vote.
I think they're both very good. I have to say, I would actually like to play them combined because I really do think that they complement each other very well. Totally. The areas that Lankhmar falls a little short on in my eyes, which is some of the edges and hindrances, I think that slotted together with Guild of Shadows, that would actually work really well. But because there are so many settings out there that I'd like to try, and for me, Lankhmar, I never read the books, so it's just another fantasy setting to me. And the Guild of Shadows has got stuff that I could easily slot into many of the different settings that I run. So I would go with Guild of Shadows, of course.
Yeah,
because it has more use to me. So
that's the last time we invite you on.
Well, then I guess I'm getting kicked out too, because that's pretty much how I would argue. I can use Guild of Shadows as a standalone product. I can just take the city of Kirstwall and run adventures in it.
Yeah.
Or I can strip all of the good stuff out and use it for campaigns in another setting. So the amount of value I'm getting from just a single book is way higher in Guild of Shadows for me as it would be for Lankhmar, even if I would buy all the other supplemental books that are out there for Lankhmar. So yeah, my vote is Guild of Shadows too.
Okay.
Wow, I'm impressed. I'm surprised.
Yeah, 3 for Guild of Shadows and 2 for Lankhmar.
So do we have to burn our Lankhmar books now?
No, never. Lankhmar is still it's a really good setting, and it really captures the flavor of the books, as we've just discussed and discovered. So it's a very great product in and on its own. It's just
it's not. It's a piece of crap, and it's a waste of money.
Wow, that's stiff. I like Richard's idea where we combine them both. So we take the pie and the cake and we make either a kai or a pake. That's brilliant.
I think I'd vote pake.
Pake? Let's do it.
Yeah, pake.
Well, so you have a pie crust and inside it's just cake and jam and stuff.
It's just cake, yeah.
It's disgusting.
That would be awesome.
No.
No, that is amazing because you'd have to pre-bake the pie, the pie, I don't know, crust.
Has this podcast fallen apart?
I don't think that the crust is the best part of a pie. I think that you want to take the pie filling and insert it inside of a delicious cake.
Can we save this for the wild pie, please? That's my segment. You guys are hijacking it.
Let's wrap this up.
Yo, motherfuckers, you all best back up. I always got a gun, I always come strap up. This ain't a game of pool, it ain't no time for no rack up. It's the motherfucking time for the motherfucking wrap up. Anyone who disagrees will get smack up. See me back in school when I shouldn't have learned to add up. Found a gun on the floor, instead to pick that up. Anyway, sorry, I'm motherfucking back up. What I'm trying to say is it's time for the wrap up. Yeah, this one goes out to all the ladies and all the men out there. Everyone in the front row, grease up. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Wild Pie Podcast and that you found the information very useful and some baking tips. Maybe make some experiments at home and let us know how it goes. If we can market this, maybe make some money. Wild pie.
If anyone bakes a cake into a pie and sends us a picture of it, they win the Goblin competition.
You're going the wrong way. You've got crust and you've got dry cake. Or sometimes even if it's moist, it's still there's no juiciness inside.
What
that.
are you saying? Well, you should ice. How the hell are you going to ice the inside of a pie? Well, you've got all the gravy and the meat in there, and you're
you just put ice cream on it.
No.
Well, that's not a cake, then, you idiot.
Pie filling. You bake it into the cake, and then you smother it in icing. Then it's like juicy and moist. It's not just it's not like eating sand, which is what you guys are trying to get with your pie crust and your cake on top.
Well, maybe I like eating sand.
It.
I don't even want to do this podcast anymore. I hate doing this. Every week something controversial. And this time...
It's about cake and pie. Yeah, we just can't agree on anything.
I did a food segment for weeks with the wild sandwich, and then you guys come in with this rubbish. You don't even know what you're talking about. You guys come from a country where everyone eats like rubbish anyway.
We eat logs.
Exactly.
So yeah, again, Richard, Saga of the Goblin Horde. You've got the stuff on Drive-Thru RPG. You just came out with a new one sheet, I think, for Christmas. What's new? What's in the pipes for Saga?
Well, I will still be releasing a few more one sheets. I'm not sure how often. Probably every couple of months. I'll try and release another one. There's a few ideas I've got for those, and Also, I'm thinking of putting together a deck of cards. I've got a few ideas for those. And other than that, there's a few other things which aren't really related to Saboteur.
Yeah, you can plug the Swift D12. That's fine.
Yeah, well, okay, so I've got my own system, Swift D12, and I've put together a quick start set of rules for those already. Those still require some revisions, and then I'll be creating a full Swift D12 version of the Saga of the Goblin Horde. I'm releasing that hopefully this year.
I read it. It's pretty good. Well done. So yeah, if you want to support Richard with the Saga of the Goblin Horde, because so far you've gotten all this stuff for free, you leeches. So now it's time to pay up or shut up. Right? So
exactly.
Follow that. Yeah. The guy worked really hard on that for nothing. So now you owe him a lot of money. That's how it works.
You should be following Richard anyway. If you have any dealings inside of Savage Worlds, he's one of the most prolific, most insightful people.
He knows more about the rules than Clint Black does.
That's right. Than Kim Jong Black.
I can't believe you'd say that, Gary. What a terrible thing to say.
All right. contact info, Harrison?
Yes, if you want to get in touch with us, then you can email us at thewilddie@gmail.com, or of course we're on the Google Plus at the Wild Die podcast at the Wild Die Podcast, and we're over at the Nerds International community as well on Google Plus, and we're on Twitter too at the Wild Die. And of course, if you like the show and would like to support us financially, get us out of the gutter, stop us from eating pies mixed with cakes, then you can go over to patreon.com/the Wild Die. And of course, at this point, we would like to thank our Patreon patrons.
Sean, Richard, Sophia, Tony, Fanning, Rob Tao, John, Peterson, Manuel Sambs, David, Maurice, Garrett, James Clark, Peter Beckett, Peter Adams, Tom Lewis, Henry Chalmers, Digital Dungeon Master, Eli Kurtz, Matthew J. Hanson, Watson Beats, John Steve, Pure Muggle, Owen Lee, Andy Hall, Christopher Gray, and Bubbles. Don't forget Gil Dashard. He is a cool guy.
All right, Richard, thanks again for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
That's it? That's as much of his as you're going to suck, Eric?
Yeah.
Thank you, Richard, for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome. All right, so this is Eric saying, what came first? The pie or the cake?
And this is Harrison saying, grapple the skies.
And this is Manuel saying, if a thief falls in the forest and nobody's there to hear him, did he really fail on his stealth check?
This is Gary saying, keep your pants on, keep it fun. Thanks, everyone. We're out.
The Wild Die Podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by Pinnacle Entertainment Group or official Pinnacle licensees. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of the respected owners. All music and artwork is used with permission of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Wild Die Podcast.